The HOA fined me thousands of dollars for hoarding springwater, screaming that my family's old pond was a flood risk. The new HOA president, a woman we'll call Clipboard Karen, handed me a final notice. Release the water. Drop the dam gates now, or you will be held liable. But she had no idea her entire case was built on a forged document. She never, ever thought I'd actually call her bluff and do exactly what she demanded. So I did. I dropped the gates as they requested, and I watched their perfect $1 million neighborhood turn into a swamp. When a bully gives you the perfect weapon to destroy them, are you supposed to just walk away? Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below, because you won't believe the footage I caught on camera. It was a Tuesday morning, crisp and clear, the kind of day I used to enjoy with a second cup of coffee on the porch. But that day, the dam gate and my old workshop. The angle was from above, high up. A drone. They had flown a drone over my private property without so much as a phone call. I'm a retired welder, spent 20 years in the Army before that. I believe in rules and doing things the right way. That pond isn't just a puddle, it's a spring-fed system I designed and built myself, all to county code, with blueprints approved back in 1992. It's not a hazard, it's a carefully managed overflow system that has protected the downstream land from flash floods for decades. This letter said the opposite. It demanded I release the excess stored water and dismantle the unauthorized barrier within 10 business days, or the fines would double. This Lisa Mancourt, I'd heard about her. An ex-realtor who'd moved into one of the big new houses a couple of years back and got herself elected president on a platform of improving community standards. Around the local diner, they just called her Clipboard Karen. She was known for measuring the height of people's grass with a tape measure and leaving passive-aggressive notes about garbage cans being left out an hour too long. Now, it seemed, her kingdom was expanding beyond her own borders and onto my land. My first thought wasn't anger, it was just tired. This was a paperwork problem, and paperwork problems have solutions. I did what any sensible person would do. I called the county. I got a hold of Dale, the senior water inspector. He's a good man, been on the job for almost as long as I've had the pond. I explained the situation, and I could practically hear him chuckle over the phone. Harlan, that pond of yours is grandfathered in 6 ways to Sunday, he told me. You've been compliant since 1992. We got a sucker punch. Mr. Cobb, it read, the documents you provided are irrelevant. Our records indicate your operational permit expired in 2015. You are in violation. That one sentence lit a fire in my gut. Expired? What permit? The county didn't issue expiring permits for a private retention system like mine. It was a one-time approval based on the build. I looked closer at their email. They included a permit number, WRP 2010-48B. It looked official enough, but something about it felt off. My file cabinets are a testament to a lifetime of keeping records. I pulled out my old folder, the one labeled Pond Well. Inside was every piece of paper related to that water system, right back to the original survey. And there it was, my actual construction approval number from 1992. It wasn't even in the same format. The number they had sent me was completely fabricated. It was a ghost. They had made it up. My tiredness turned to a cold, hard anger. This wasn't a mistake anymore. This was a lie. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. My nephew, Jesse, sent me a link to the Oakwood Preserve Neighborhood Facebook group. It was a public post, anonymous, but I knew exactly where it came from. It was drone footage, the same high-angle view from the photos they'd sent me, set to some kind of dramatic, scary music. The caption read, "Uphill landowner, hoarding water, putting our homes and children at risk. When will the county do something to stop this negligence?" The comments underneath were a cesspool of fear and misinformation. People who had never even met me were calling me a menace, a ticking time bomb. They were demanding the HOA take immediate action. I sat there, staring at the screen, the fake permit number from their email burning in my mind, the anonymous Facebook post painting me as a villain. It all clicked into place. This wasn't about water safety. It wasn't about permits. This was a coordinated attack. Lisa Mancourt didn't want compliance. She wanted my land, or at least control over it. She was manufacturing a crisis, forging documents, and turning my new neighbors against me to get what she wanted. This was personal, and it was escalating fast. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept seeing that fake permit number, WRP 2010-48B, glowing in the dark. It was sloppy. It was arrogant. They thought I was just some old man who would get scared, write a check, and tear down a system I'd spent years perfecting. They underestimated me. The Army taught me a few things. First, you never go into a fight without good intelligence. Second, you use your enemy's own rule book against them. Lisa Mancourt loved rules and paperwork, so I decided to bury her in them. The next morning, I drafted a formal letter. I cited North Carolina General Statutes, Chapter 132, the Public Records Act. Even though I wasn't in their HOA, their official actions concerned my property, and I had a right to see every piece of correspondence, every report, and every vote related to me. I sent it by certified mail, return receipt requested. The waiting was the hardest part. While I waited, I went back to the county planning office. This time, I didn't call. I went in person. I found Dale, the water inspector, and showed him the email from the HOA with their fake permit number. He looked at it, squinted, and shook his head. "Harlan," he said, "I've been here 30 years. I've never seen a permit number formatted like this. It's bogus." He led me back to the archives, a dusty room that smelled of old paper and forgotten history. We spent 2 hours digging through files from 2010. We found nothing. No permit, no application, no inspection for anything related to my land. The permit they cited didn't just expire. It never existed. About a week later, a thick manila envelope arrived from the HOA's management company. It was their response to my records request. Inside was a stack of papers, but most of it was useless. Entire pages were blacked out with a marker. Redacted, they called it. They were hiding something, but they got sloppy. Tucked in the middle of the stack was a printout of the fake permit form itself. It was a crude forgery, looked like something made in Microsoft Word. But the most damning part was the signature at the bottom, a messy scrawl above the typed name of a county engineer, a man named Bill Patterson. I knew Bill. He used to come out and inspect the county culverts. A good man. He retired years ago. A quick search on the county's own website confirmed it. Bill Patterson had his retirement party in 2008. The document the HOA was using to fine me thousands of dollars was dated 2010 and signed by a man who hadn't worked there for 2 years. This was the receipt. This was the proof I needed. But there was more. On the back of one of the redacted pages, a single email had been printed. An email they clearly forgot to black out. It was from Lisa Mancourt to another board member. The subject line was, "The uphill problem." I read it twice, my blood running cold. "We can't have water pooling up there, it's a mosquito risk, and a lawsuit waiting to happen," she wrote. And then came the sentence that told me everything. "He's not even in the HOA. Let's push hard." It was never about a flood risk. It was a power grab, a land grab. I wasn't one of her subjects, so she was manufacturing a crisis to force me under her thumb. The anger was back, but this time it was different. It was calm. It was focused. I called my nephew Jesse. He's a firefighter, sharp as a tack and good with technology. I showed him the drone footage from the Facebook group. He just nodded. "Uncle Harlan," he said, "let's get our own footage." The next Saturday, Jesse brought over his drone. We walked the property line with a survey map and a measuring tape. The main gate for my retention pond, the one they called a hazard, was a full 15 feet inside my property line. far from their jurisdiction. Jesse flew his drone straight up, camera pointed down, showing my gate, the property stakes, and the HOA's manicured lawns in one clean shot. He overlaid the county plat map on the video, drawing a big, red digital line. There was no argument. The proof was right there. That's when the fear left me completely. It was replaced by a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. I had the HOA's own email proving their intent. I had proof their official document was a forgery. And I had crystal clear video evidence showing they had no jurisdiction. I wasn't done. My neighbor's son, Travis, was a smart young man studying civil engineering at the state university. I showed him everything. His eyes lit up. He spent a weekend running rainfall models and runoff calculations. He wrote up a 2-page hydrology report, complete with charts and diagrams by just a crack. Then I cranked it back the other way, lifting the heavy sluice gate at the bottom of the dam. I didn't throw it wide open. That would be reckless. That's what they expected me to do. Instead, I opened it just 2 inches. It was enough. A small, steady stream of clear spring water, about as thick as my arm, began to flow out of the pond and down the natural runoff channel. It wasn't a flood, it was a promise. The water gurgled peacefully as it wound its way downhill toward their perfectly manicured greenbelt. On the drive back to the house, I turned on the radio. The weatherman was talking about a big system moving in from the west. The first showers were light, but by next week, they were calling for 4 to 6 inches of rain over a couple of days. I sat on my porch, watched the little stream of water disappear into the trees, and waited. All I had to do now was let them have exactly what they asked for. I just had to wait for the rain. Gravity would do the rest. The next few days were quiet. The small stream from my pond trickled down the hillside, a peaceful, constant presence. From my porch, I could barely hear it. It followed the old runoff channel, a natural ditch carved out by 100 years of rain, and disappeared into the trees that separated my land from the manicured lawns of Oakwood Preserve. The water level in my pond dropped by a few inches, just as it was supposed to. Everything was working exactly as designed. It was the HOA that wasn't working. On Monday morning, I saw a notice tacked up on their community message board down by the main road. In fancy looping letters, it announced the first annual Oakwood Preserve Spring Garden Fete for the coming Saturday. There would be lemonade, little sandwiches, and a contest for the best petunias. And the location for this grand event? Their community greenbelt, the very same sloped field that sat directly at the bottom of my runoff channel. It was like planning a picnic on a railroad track. The next day, a commercial landscaping crew arrived. They weren't there to plant flowers. They were there to scalp the earth. The greenbelt was bordered by a thick, 30-foot-wide patch of native grasses and cattails, a natural buffer that had been there for as long as I could remember. Those plants were a vital part of the local ecosystem. Their deep roots held the soil together and soaked up excess water like a giant sponge. To Lisa Mancourt, it just looked messy. She wanted a clean view for her party. I watched through my binoculars as 2 men with heavy-duty brush hogs leveled the entire buffer zone in under an hour. They chewed up the waist-high grasses and spat them out like sawdust. By the time they were done, the greenbelt was a smooth, bare ramp of dirt leading directly to their storm drain. Jesse's little GoPro, hidden in the oak tree, recorded every second of it. We had time-stamped video of an insured landscaping company, presumably hired by the HOA, violating state stormwater regulations. They had just bulldozed their own last line of defense. By Wednesday, the effect was already obvious. My steady little stream of water no longer had a buffer to slow it down and soak it up. It hit the bare dirt of the greenbelt and kept moving, carrying loose topsoil with it. It pooled around the storm drain at the bottom of the field, a growing muddy puddle. The problem was the drain itself. From my property line, I could see the culvert pipe was almost completely blocked with last fall's leaves, grass clippings, and trash. They had spent thousands on landscapers to make the place look pretty, but hadn't spent $50 to have a kid with a rake clean out their own drain. The puddle grew into a small pond. Thursday brought a new complication. I saw a water company truck speed down the main road into the subdivision. Later, my neighbor told me what happened. One of the new homeowners, the one with the huge house at the end of the cul-de-sac, was having a massive in-ground pool installed. The contractors had hit a water main. For 3 hours, thousands of gallons of chlorinated water gushed down the street, right into the same overloaded storm drain. The muddy puddle in the greenbelt was now a small swamp. That evening, Jesse came over. The light rain had started, a soft, steady drizzle. The weather report said the main event would arrive overnight. "It's time," I said. He sent his drone up. The view on his controller screen was damning. We saw the steady, clear stream coming from my property. We saw it hit the barren greenbelt. We saw the massive, muddy swamp that had swallowed the entire field and was now creeping up the lawns of the houses that bordered it. Jesse flew the drone lower, hovering directly over the blocked culvert. You could see the water struggling to get through the packed debris. He then flew a wide circle, showing the water from the burst main still trickling down the gutter into the same basin. It was a perfect storm of their own making. Jesse took the footage and went to work. He didn't just have a video. He created a full-blown report. He put my GoPro footage of the landscapers destroying the buffer zone side by side with the drone footage of the resulting flood. He added titles with dates and timestamps. He downloaded the rainfall data from the National Weather Service and overlaid it on the screen. He even pulled up the county tax map and drew bright red lines, showing exactly where their responsibility began and mine ended. The final video was 10 minutes long. It was clear, simple, and undeniable. It wasn't an angry rant. It was a professional engineering assessment. It told a story of pure, unfiltered negligence. That night, with the rain starting to come down harder, I opened my email. I attached Jesse's video file. I addressed it to Dale, the county water inspector. I kept the message short. It was only 5 words long. I complied. They didn't. "Regards, Harlan Cobb." I hit send. Then I turned off the computer, sat on my covered porch, and listened to the rain. The real rain. The rain came down all night. A heavy, relentless drumming on my tin roof. It was the kind of soaking storm that settles deep into the earth, the kind my pond was built to handle. By dawn, the rain had softened to a steady drizzle, but the damage was done. It was Saturday, the day of the spring garden fete. I poured myself a cup of coffee and walked out onto my porch. I didn't need binoculars this time. The entire HOA greenbelt was gone. In its place was a shallow, brown lake, stretching from one end of the common area to the other. The carefully mowed turf, the site of the planned party, was now a swamp. Little white stakes that had marked out vendor booths stuck out of the muddy water like tiny, pathetic gravestones. The blocked culvert had failed completely. Unable to drain the combined flow from my spring, the burst water main, and 4 inches of overnight rain, the water had nowhere to go but up and out. It had breached the decorative curb and was now a sheet of muddy water flowing across the lawns of the 3 houses at the bottom of the hill. I could see the water line halfway up their pristine white vinyl fences. It was a disaster. It was a beautiful sight. My phone rang just after 10 a.m. The caller ID was a number I didn't recognize, but I had a pretty good idea who it was. I let it ring 4 times, then picked it up. "Hello?" I said, keeping my voice calm and even. The voice on the other end was anything but. It was a shriek, high-pitched and full of rage. It was Lisa Mancourt. "You did this!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "You flooded us! You opened that dam of yours and you deliberately tried to destroy our homes. We're ruined. I'm calling the sheriff. We are going to sue you for everything you have." I took a slow sip of my coffee. I let her finish her tirade. When she finally paused to take a breath, I spoke. My voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Lisa," I said, using her first name for the first time. "I just followed your orders. You sent me a notarized letter demanding I open the gate. You have my certified letter confirming I did exactly what you asked. You got it all in writing. You wanted the water. Now you have it." There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears in her brain grinding to a halt, trying to process what I'd just said. She sputtered for a moment, said something about her lawyers, and then the line went dead. She had hung up. But the show was just getting started. About an hour later, I heard a different kind of buzz in the air. It wasn't Jesse's drone. This one was bigger, louder. It was a county drone, the kind they use for emergency assessments. It hovered over the new swamp, methodically scanning back and forth, its camera documenting the scene. I knew Dale had gotten my email. I could picture him watching Jesse's video, a grim look on his face, as he dispatched his own team. This was out of my hands now. It was a county matter. Later that afternoon, a neighbor who still talked to me called. He sounded breathless. "You won't believe this, Harlan," he said. "The county engineers are down here. They've got blueprints and survey equipment. They're not even looking at your property. They're looking at ours." He told me the county inspector had found a laundry list of violations, all on the HOA. The improperly graded culvert. The illegal removal of the state-mandated stormwater buffer. All of it. The worst part, he said, was the retaining wall behind the third house. It was leaning, cracked, and water was seeping through the base. The county had flagged that wall for being out of compliance back in 2017, long before Lisa Mancourt was ever in charge, and the HOA had done nothing. The county engineer, a woman in a bright yellow vest, was overheard telling one of the board members something that my neighbor said he'd never forget. She just pointed at the flowing water and said, "Ma'am, you can't vote against gravity." The local news van showed up around 3 o'clock. A young reporter stood in front of the flooded backyards, a microphone in her hand, talking about the mystery flood that had ruined the community's big event. A few residents were on camera, looking distraught. Then, one older gentleman, a man who'd lived there since the beginning, stepped in front of the camera. "This ain't no mystery," he said, his voice firm. "We've been telling that board for years about that drain. They ignored us. They were too busy fining people for leaving their garden gnomes out. This was coming. This was always coming. The foundation of Lisa Mancourt's little kingdom was washing away, right there on the 5 o'clock news. It wasn't my Springwater that flooded them. It was their own arrogance. I had just opened the gate they told me to open. They had done the rest. Gravity and incompetence, working together in perfect, muddy harmony. The fallout was swift. The local news story acted like a lit match in a dry forest. Suddenly, everyone in Oakwood Preserve was an expert in stormwater management. The HOA's private Facebook group, the same one where they'd posted the anonymous drone footage of my property, exploded with angry comments. The emergency board meeting was called for Tuesday night in the community clubhouse. It was standing room only. I wasn't invited, of course. I wasn't a member. But Jesse had sent his 10-minute video to one of the board members, a quiet man named Frank, who I knew from the hardware store. Frank had always seemed like a reasonable guy, the type who got roped into HOA service because nobody else wanted the job. He had watched the video, and then he'd shared it with the other board members, all except Lisa Mancourt. I heard about the meeting from my neighbor the next morning. He said it was like a scene from a movie. They started by letting Lisa speak. She stood up, clipboard in hand, and launched into a prepared speech about my reckless and malicious actions. She waved a copy of her final notice letter in the air, claiming it was proof of my non-compliance, not her order. She was trying to rewrite history, painting herself as the victim who had tried to warn everyone about the dangerous old man on the hill. She demanded the board approve an immediate lawsuit against me. But then Frank stood up. He walked to the front of the room, plugged his laptop into the big screen TV on the wall, and without saying a word, he played Jesse's video. The room fell silent. For 10 minutes, the residents of Oakwood Preserve watched the undeniable truth unfold. They saw the footage of their own landscapers destroying the natural water buffer. They saw the close-up of the hopelessly clogged culvert. They saw the timeline, with the rainfall data clearly displayed. And they saw my small, steady stream of water being turned into a flood by their own series of mistakes. The video ended with a clear shot of the notarized letter from Lisa, her signature bold and clear, right next to the words, "Remove all artificial barriers." When the screen went black, the silence in the room was deafening. My neighbor said Lisa's face went white as a sheet. People started shouting questions, not at me, but at her. Why was the culvert never cleaned? Who approved the landscaping work? Why hadn't the board fixed the retaining wall that the county flagged years ago? She had no answers. The board called for an immediate vote. The motion wasn't to sue me. It was to suspend Lisa Mancourt as president, pending a full investigation. The vote was 3-1. Her one loyal vote, the ex-security guard Doug, just stared at the floor. The very next day, the official letter arrived from the county. It wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to the Oakwood Preserve HOA. The county had issued a total of $85,000 in fines. There were penalties for the illegal destruction of a protected wetland buffer, for the failure to maintain their stormwater system, and for non-compliance with the 2017 retaining wall order. The county had taken all my proof, all my documentation, and turned it into a weapon. They didn't just find the HOA at fault, they used their own rulebook to prove it, chapter and verse. That's when I decided to release my file. Not for revenge, but for clarity. The local news reporter had been calling me, and I finally agreed to an interview on my terms. I didn't want to be on camera. I just wanted the facts to be public. I gave her the entire folder, my original blueprints from 1992, the HOA's threatening letters, a copy of the forged permit, and Jesse's video. She ran with it. The next night's broadcast was an investigative piece. They showed the forged permit side by side with a statement from the county confirming that the engineer whose name was on it had retired 2 years before it was supposedly signed. They even interviewed Bill Patterson, the retired engineer, who confirmed on camera he had never signed it. "That's not my signature," he said, looking at the document with disgust. "It's a complete fake." The story was no longer about a simple flood. It was about fraud. The final nail in the coffin came from the county sheriff's office. They announced they were opening a criminal investigation into document falsification and forgery, with Lisa Mancourt named as the primary person of interest. Her carefully constructed world of rules and regulations had crumbled because she had built it on a foundation of lies. The last I saw of her was on a cell phone video someone posted online. She was storming out of a second community meeting, shouting at residents, a wild look in her eyes. The power was gone. All that was left was the raw, sputtering anger of a bully who had finally been put in her place. All because she signed a piece of paper, and I was smart enough to do exactly what it said. After the storm, there's a certain kind of quiet. The water on their side of the fence receded, leaving behind a brown, muddy scar across 3 backyards and a community greenbelt that looked like a dry riverbed. The circus left town. The news vans found another story, and the angry chatter on the neighborhood Facebook group slowly faded, replaced by arguments over what color to paint the clubhouse. My part in the drama was over, but my work wasn't. The first thing I did was close my dam gate back to its normal position, letting the pond slowly refill to its safe, manageable level. Then I got to work building a proper, modern overflow channel. It wasn't something the county required, but it was something I required of myself. I hired Travis, the young engineering student, to help me design it. We planned a secondary spillway, wider and shallower than the old one, lined with heavy river rock to prevent erosion. It was an elegant, simple solution that would handle a 100-year flood event without breaking a sweat. It took me 2 weeks of hard work with a rented mini excavator. But when I was done, it was perfect. I had it inspected and certified by the county, and I mailed a copy of the final, stamped approval to the HOA board. Not out of spite, but just for the record. The resolution for them was a lot more expensive. The HOA's insurance company, after reviewing the evidence, refused to cover the damages, citing gross negligence. The board had to levy a massive special assessment on every homeowner to pay the $85,000 county fine. Then came the settlements. They paid out to the 3 flooded families. I never heard the exact figure, but the rumor was it was well into the 6 figures to cover the foundation repairs, new landscaping, and crawl space remediation. The community's big project for the year was no longer a new pickleball court. It was paying for their own incompetence. Lisa Mancourt was never seen at another meeting. About a month after the flood, a moving truck pulled up to her house. She and her husband sold their home at a loss and were gone before the end of the season. Her resignation wasn't dramatic. It was a short, 1-sentence email read aloud at a meeting, a quiet, pathetic end to her reign. The criminal investigation into the forgery is still ongoing, a slow-moving gear in the machinery of justice. The biggest change, however, was in their rulebook. At their annual meeting, the HOA voted almost unanimously to add a new bylaw. It stated that no legal action or official demand could be made against any non-HOA property without a majority vote of the entire board, a certified third-party engineering report, and a formal opinion from a qualified attorney. They had built a fence of rules, not to control others, but to protect themselves from another leader like Lisa. One evening, a few weeks later, I was out checking the new spillway when I saw a car pull up to my gate. It was Frank, the board member who had played Jesse's video at the meeting. He got out of his car and walked over, a hesitant look on his face. He wasn't a man who was comfortable with confrontation or grand gestures. He just nodded toward my pond. "It's looking good, Harlan," he said. I thanked him. We stood in silence for a moment, listening to the birds. "Look," he said finally, meeting my eyes. "I know things got ugly. On behalf of the board, the new board, anyway, I wanted to thank you." I must have looked confused. He continued, "That retaining wall, the county flagged? The engineers said it was one big storm away from a catastrophic failure. If that thing had gone, it would have taken out half a house. Your little flood exposed it. It forced us to finally fix it. It forced us to fix everything." He looked back at his neighborhood. "You didn't ruin our community," he said. "You saved us from a much bigger disaster." He stuck out his hand, and I shook it. It was the only apology I ever got, and the only one I needed. The neighborhood looks different now. They hired a real civil engineering firm. The ugly, barren greenbelt now has a series of beautiful rain gardens, filled with native plants that soak up water. They replaced the blocked culvert with a proper drainage system. It's funny. By trying to force me to conform, Lisa Mancourt had accidentally forced her entire neighborhood to become more responsible, more resilient. My life is quiet again, just the way I like it. My pond is clear and calm. The water level is exactly where it should be. I'm just an old man on a piece of land his family has owned for generations. But when the new folks in those big houses at the bottom of the hill walk their dogs, they sometimes look up here and give a little nod. It's a nod of respect. All I did was follow orders. Sometimes, that's all it takes when the orders are dumb enough. And I think they all finally learned the same lesson I've always known.